Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I trust you enjoyed the refreshments. We will now proceed with our special symposium on commemorating the 10th anniversary of the Free and Open Indo-Pacific. Now, to open today's symposium, it is our privilege to have a keynote speech delivered by Mr. Shingo Miyamoto, Director General for Southeast and Southwest Asian Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. Mr. Shingo Miyamoto, you have the floor.
Distinguished participants, my longtime friend Watanabe-san, arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you. A very good day to all of you. Salam sejahtera untuk semuanya. Terima kasih atas kehadirannya. My name is Shingo Miyamoto. I'm the Director General for from the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs in charge of Japan's relations with ASEAN, and also all members of ASEAN, and also the South Asian countries. It's a great honor for me to be here. Thank you very much. My key message today is very simple. Japan and ASEAN are partners to be more resilient and prosperous together under the vision of the Free and Open Indo-Pacific, FOIP, and AOIP, which share fundamental principles. This is not just a diplomatic jargon. It reflects Japan's genuine commitment to walking alongside ASEAN in an era of mounting complexity. Last year, when Malaysia was chairing ASEAN, I participated in the summit meetings with my Prime Minister, and this was the first time that she engaged with ASEAN. And I still remember vividly how the summit meeting coincided with the presence of the American president on the same day. And you can imagine how difficult it was to manage just the logistics of the meetings when all of the heads of state and government of ASEAN and the United States and Japan converged, in the same place on the same day. And it was even difficult to secure meeting venues because honestly speaking, I think the Americans, were just keeping all the rooms and no one else had control over those. But the point I wanted to make today in the beginning of my statement is that the ASEAN countries all got together and worked out the schedule and the meeting rooms to make sure that the summit meetings between ASEAN and the United States and Japan both happened at the same time. And I will also take note of the fact that the ASEC Plus meeting also happened. And this was, a crazy challenge, but it happened. And I think this is really testament to the fact that all of us attach a great level of importance in this or these frameworks of cooperation. I will also say, because I was with her the whole time, how our Prime Minister received a strong impression that all our partner countries, they attach a great importance to the cooperation with Japan. And she was greeted very warmly with every single leader of ASEAN, which I think has created this impression in her mind that, this is something that we need to uphold and pursue. So just wanted to say that at the outset of my statement. But moving on, I would like to talk a little bit about the new free and open Indo-Pacific vision, which our Prime Minister put forth when she visited Vietnam recently. I think at the baseline of all of this, there is a situational awareness that our government has on what is happening in the world surrounding us now. We believe that the international order is undergoing a lot of structural change. We are seeing some unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force or coercion, not just in our region, but in other places as well. We are also seeing increasingly accelerating technological innovation. We are also seeing emerging and growing challenges, but also opportunities from the rise of the economic growth of the global South. So these are no longer hypothetical changes that, we've been talking about these things for a while now, but we are seeing these things happen as, it unfolding in front of our own eyes, and we are having to cope with these two things on an increasingly quick pace. So that is the reality that we're having to deal with together. Now, in this context, the new FOIP it maintains the fundamental principles which were set forth by our late Prime Minister Abe when he first came forward with this concept. However, we have, I think, refocused its directional efforts to match the current situation. And the really important concepts that we have put forward are these two things. One is the freedom of our countries and our peoples to decide for themselves. This is something that we really think is important in order for us to be able to navigate this really challenging times. The second is resilience. So the freedom and capability of each country to determine its own future. These have become more critical than ever in the current situation. So it is this sense of urgency that Prime Minister Takaichi announced this updated FOIP. So this is one thing I wanted to stress at the outset. So I will go on to explain some of the core principles and the areas of focus that we have in this new FOIP, but I hope that you will see that there's probably an increased level of convergence between what we seek to achieve through this new updated FOIP and what our respective countries need in this current times. So FOIP was first articulated by Prime Minister Abe, of course, in 2016. It's been 10 years. And the core principles which was put forward back in those times, freedom, openness, diversity, inclusiveness, and the rule of law, I think all of these things remain to be relevant as ever. But 10 years have passed, and the world has changed considerably. But the relevance of FOIP, I think, has not wavered. I think I may venture to say that it's even more relevant today. So the updated FOIP, Free and Open Indo-Pacific, is Japan's response to these new realities. The intensifying geopolitical competition, accelerating technological innovation, and the rise of the global South. Japan, I think, has renewed its determination to play an even more proactive role in building an international order based on these enduring principles. And I also wanted to make a point, or maybe reiterate the important but even more relevant point that the Free and Open Indo-Pacific, FOIP and AOIP, are mutually complementary. These are not competing concepts, but are complementary to each other, as the Secretary just mentioned in his statement. In 2019, by starting 19, it shows how old I am. In 2019, ASEAN adopted the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, which shares the core values and spirit with Japan's Free and Open Indo-Pacific. So FOIP and AOIP are not competing or alternative visions. They are mutually complementary. And in the Japan-ASEAN joint statement in October last year, we confirmed the complementarity and synergy between FOIP and AOIP and committed to promoting further cooperation. This holds equally true under the updated FOIP. Japan and ASEAN share the same path and goals. And I think I will try to elaborate on this in more concrete terms later in my speech. But this complementarity is something that we always would like to keep in mind. Now, the key features of the updated FOIP are as follows. We have a clear focus. The principles are the same, but I think Japan's intention was to refocus its efforts in the areas which are more relevant in the challenging times that I was talking about. The focus is to help each country in the region, including Japan ourselves, to acquire resilience and the capability to have the freedom to decide for ourselves across economic, social, and security domains. Japan will advance these efforts itself while working closely with like-minded partners to provide cooperation and projects tailored to the needs of each country in this region. And the goal of this is that Japan and ASEAN and the entire Indo-Pacific region become more resilient and prosperous together. Now, we have 3 priority areas of this updated FOIP. And I will try to explain these briefly. I will not go into too much detail, but when you hear these focus areas, I think you will understand what I was talking about when I said we want to be more resilient together and we want to secure our future together. So one of the pillars is building economic infrastructure for the age of AI and data. You will see, if you look into the website of the Japanese Foreign Ministry or the Prime Minister's office, you will not only see that our engagement with the countries of ASEAN and also South Asia have been significant since Prime Minister Takaichi came into office. But every time you will see some focus on this pillar of the new FOIP, which is building an economic infrastructure for the age of AI and data. We need to strengthen the supply chain resilience for energy and critical minerals. And this has also been a consistent focus. You will see from the outcome of every single summit meetings that we've had that we have included some measure to make sure that these partner countries in this region are able to secure their energy resources and also critical minerals. So I just wanted to point that out. Also, developing infrastructure essential for the age of AI and data, such as undersea cables, Open RAN, satellite communications, all optical networks. These were all included in our efforts to work together with the countries in the region that I'm talking about right now. We coined it as the FOIP digital corridor concept, but this is also an important focus. Another focus is building a safe, secure, and trustworthy AI ecosystem together with ASEAN, including the development of a native language AI models and cultivation of advanced AI talent. So these things are, the first of the three focus areas that I talked about. And the second is co-creation of economic growth and rule sharing. Leveraging, Japan's expertise and technology to address challenges in the global south and co-creating new business opportunities and markets. So this is the second focus. One thing that we want to do through this line of effort is promoting strategic expansion of the CPTPP agreement, including early accession processes for the Philippines, Indonesia, and the United Arab Emirates. Also, another line of work that we attach great importance to is strengthening rules on e-commerce, supply chain resilience, and addressing economic coercion. And I will talk very briefly about the third pillar, which is enhancing security cooperation. Strengthening maritime security is extremely important. Section spoke about this as well. We are seeing this in a painful way in the current times. When we all know what's happening in the Gulf and the impact that has had on our lives, not just our lives, but everyone's lives. So Japan aims to strengthen cooperation with foreign Coast Guard agencies and enhance mutual capabilities through capacity building support and joint exercises. We will leverage our official development assistance and also official security assistance for security purposes to enhance the capability of our partner countries in the FOIP region. And we will also promote defense equipment transfers and cybersecurity capacity building. You will notice that Japan recently changed its very decades-long policy on arms exports. It's been substantially liberalized. We are working with Australia right now about the possibility of exporting a Japanese destroyer, but we can do such things now. And we hope to do this more and more so that we can enhance our collective ability to make sure that the passageways are safe for navigation for all our peoples. Now, those are the main concepts that I wanted to explain to you. But lastly, but not least, I wanted to, lead your attention to, I think, the fact that this concept is being met by a pretty high level of, good reception by the countries in the region. And one example is the Asia Zero Emission Community Plus online summit, which my Prime Minister hosted in April of this year. Now, this was, in the initial stages of the energy crisis that we are all faced with. And I must say that this online meeting was planned in a very quick way, where we had maybe only a 1 week advance, lead time before we were supposed to get together in this online format. And we were tasked by our Prime Minister's office to make sure that this meeting happened. So if you can think about a 1 week notice time to get all the leaders from ASEAN plus, India and all those other countries to get together in this meeting, albeit the fact that it was online. And it was very challenging. But when the meeting happened, we were met with a surprising, happy response because we got most of the leaders from ASEAN and the region as well to come together and discuss the escalating situation in the Middle East and how this has posed a serious threat to energy supplies and supply chains. We were the hardest hit, those of us in Asia, by this. So we announced that we would launch the Power Asia initiative and, aiming to enhance the resilience of this region. And the fact that all of those countries came together and discussed this, and we are now implementing this. Every meeting that we have with these countries in the region has an element of implementation of this. I'm not going to say that this will resolve all the issues, but we are trying to play a meaningful role in making sure that this region can survive this together and also prosper together and come out stronger together. So I would encourage you to maybe try to go to the Japanese Foreign Ministry's website or the Prime Minister's office's website. We have a log of all of these things that I just mentioned, and we have a pretty good readout from each of these meetings as well. And I think you will see what I was talking about. There is a consistent and persistent, I would say, effort by our current government to make sure that we are addressing these challenges, which I outlined just now, together. And so I will come back to my original point, which is the convergence of, policy and direction between Japan's new FOIP and the AOIP. And I think we can talk about how we can update these things, as was, discussed in the previous session. Going to my closing remarks, FOIP it's not an imposing thing, where we try to impose one way of doing things. It's a very flexible approach, practical approach. And I think our Prime Minister, it's not in my text, but my Prime Minister said something like, there's a FOIP for everyone. There's a FOIP for Indonesia, or FOIP for, Cambodia, a FOIP for Japan as well. The important thing is that we're trying to pursue all of these things for the good of our own countries, but then there's a lot of convergence in our goals and efforts. Oh yeah, it's written here. I was supposed to say it's so good. So we are all countries that want to be more resilient, that are making our own choices. But we are cooperating together to make sure that that happens. We will build a free and open Indo-Pacific as the foundation of our shared peace and prosperity. And Japan is committed to doing this together with ASEAN and our partner countries in South Asia. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussions following this. Thank you. Terima kasih banyak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shingo Miyamoto, for starting the symposium on a high note. So brief information about this event. This symposium brings together leading policymakers and experts to explore how the principles of the free and open Indo-Pacific and the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific complement one another in today's challenging geopolitical landscape. Discussions will focus on strengthening economic partnerships and connectivity, promoting regional resilience through de-risking rather than decoupling, advancing digitalization and decarbonization, and identifying practical ways to deepen FOIP-AOIP cooperation. It is now my pleasure to introduce our moderator and distinguished speakers for the panel session. Serving as the moderator is His Excellency Ambassador Takio Yamada, Executive Director of the Japan Institute of International Affairs Center for Global Outreach and Executive Fellow at JIIA. Joining the panel are, first, I would like to welcome back again Mr. Shingo Miyamoto, Director General for Southeast and Southwest Asian Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. Now joining us virtually is His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Siswo Pramono, Indonesia's Ambassador to Australia and Vanuatu. Welcome, Ambassador Siswo. Next, we have His Excellency Dr. Chieng Wanarath, Deputy Secretary General of the National Assembly of Cambodia. Lastly, we have Dr. Maria Monica Wiharja, Fellow and Co-Coordinator of the Media, Technology and Society Program at IC's Yusof Ishak Institute. Ambassador Yamada, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I'm Takio Yamada, Executive Director, the Center for Global Outreach of Japan Institute of International Affairs. And also, I'm concurrently serves as Japan's Ambassador for ASEC, Asia's Zero Emission Community. And my portfolio also covers the Power Asia initiative, which was introduced by Mr. Shingo Miyamoto. And after listening to a very insightful and informative presentation by Mr. Miyamoto, I'd like to stress that now everybody, every country are responding to the profound shift of the regional and global circumstances in both geopolitics and geoeconomics. And updated FOIP announced by Prime Minister Takaichi in May in Vietnam. It's Japan's proposal in a way to address the new challenges, which is very serious and very important for every country in the region. And we believe that ASEAN is also doing a lot of things to respond to the emerging new geopolitical circumstances of the region. And so, this meeting, in my view, should be an opportunity to explore the ways how we can find the new and updated synergy between FOIP and AOIP. And so I'm so glad that, now today we have an excellent panelist introduced by the MC, Madam MC. Thank you very much. And so first I'd like to invite Ambassador Susio, Ambassador Pramono. I know that he's one of the architects of the AOIP, which was decided in 2019 as a key interlocutor of the Indonesian Foreign Ministry. So Ambassador Pramono, could you give us your thoughts about the current situation, particularly in what direction the ASEAN efforts to address the situation under the AOIP should move forward? And is there any possibility of the updating? And also, what is your view of these new types of synergy between FOIP and AOIP, and what do you expect from Japan? Ambassador Susio, please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Yamada and DG Shingo Miyamoto. I've been following from the very beginning, but unfortunately, I have only 30 minutes before I come to another engagement. So yes, I would like to start with the world view from Indonesia and the world view of ASEAN. Indonesia, our foreign policy is independent, active, and non-aligned. This is our worldview. ASEAN, until today consider itself the region as zone of peace, freedom, and neutrality, and would like to work together with all the ASEAN partners. And we have many partners, yeah, and equally the same, yeah. And we have the principle of Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, which is the basis of our engagement with the world, as well as ASEAN centrality. Now, I would like to memorize a little bit the birth of the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Yeah, I should start with the complicated geopolitics at that time. Yeah, 2015 to 2020. Yeah, let's say it starts at 2013. 2013 is the first time when China established one belt, one road. Yeah, and then in 2015, when America have the new administration, OPER become BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, and in 2017, there was a BRI forum in Beijing attended by 30 countries, in which I'm part of Indonesian delegation. Yeah. Now, it is also in 2017 that US launched FOIP, American FOIP. Japanese FOIP come first, and then the American FOIP come later. And it was also announced during the ASEAN summit in Manila. Yeah. But then in 2017 to 2019, 2017 when America announced the FOIP, and 2019 when ASEAN formulate the AOIP, yeah, the BRI also progressing very well. Yeah, at that time, 130 countries become parties to the BRI. Yeah, Indonesia included. Yeah, we have some project on BRI. Now, then 2018, just a year after 2017, of course, we have the first American sanction, tariff, and so on. China retaliate, and this was the first U.S.-China trade war. Yeah, during the first Trump administration. Yeah. Now, this kind of pressure at that time makes ASEAN work very quickly, and never before ASEAN has a very major project that can be completed in less than 2 years. And this is the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific. But at the same time, with the rapid increasing members of BRI, at the same time, I remember the world also produced a lot of ideas, at least 10 concepts of the Indo-Pacific. We start with the German thinking on Indo-Pacific, European Union, of course, then the Australian, India with Sagar, India with Sagar, Canada, at least 10. Yeah. And this kind of things makes our Indo-Pacific and ASEAN become molded by the situation, being molded by the situation. So we design our ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific still very strong in ASEAN principle, but at the same time very flexible, very inclusive. Yeah, it actually set a certain principle and 4 clusters of cooperation: maritime cooperation, connectivity, and Thailand come up with connecting connectivity, UN SDGs, and economic cooperation. But this was in 2019, and then we plunged into COVID. And for almost 2 years, the world stopped because of COVID. So we don't have a chance at the time to immediately implement our ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific. But then in 2022, when Indonesia is the chair of the G20, now we start to revive again the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific, because Indonesia then become the chair of the ASEAN Summit in 2023. And this is the first time we have a very big project being implemented. If you remember at the time during the ASEAN Summit in 2023, we have almost a total 93 projects under the Indonesian chairmanship on the on ASEAN and Indo-Pacific at the times. Yeah, but the project is also interlinked with the G20 because only one year difference. So during the G20, we champion public health, energy transitions, and digital transformation. And during the ASEAN Summit, in which we discussed a lot about the implementation of ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific, we discussed green infrastructure, which is very much with the Japanese one, resilient and supply, sustainable financing, and digital transformation. But not only that, yeah, ASEAN, the AOIP program managed to have a concrete recommendation, like 45 projects from Indonesia, Vietnam 14 project, and the Philippines about 11 projects. The role of Japanese is very strong at the times, yeah, because on the other partners, the partner side, Japanese took about 16 projects, yeah, support 16 projects. And then we have UK 12 projects, South Korea 12, China 11, Australia 10, and so on. So my point is that this is our Indo-Pacific. We are ready to work together with our partners. We are ready to work together with Japan. I believe there will be synergy between the updated version of Indo-Pacific and the implementation of our ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Sushio. And you described the background history of the development of AOIP, and also you actually felt a very important role Indonesia has played as the chair of G20 and chair of ASEAN. And now, you have just suggested the future course of cooperation and the AOIP and FOIP synergy. And well, I understand that you are a bit reserved on that point. That's still you're serving as an ambassador, and I understand it at that point. But maybe later, please share your thoughts, privately, with us. I'm sure that you have a lot of ideas on that. And next, can I invite Dr. Vanalit first, maybe? And he's one of the experts of the region. And he also knows Japan very well. I'm very surprised about his Japanese language, actually.
No.
Yeah. And please give us your thoughts about the future course of the synergy between the OIP and the FOIP, and particularly given the intensifying challenges we are facing in the region. Please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you, ERIA, JIIA, especially School of Government, for the opportunity to share, to learn. I think we have a very rich discussion this morning. It's very hard for us to add our perspective. I think it is crystal clear that we have strong political consensus, okay, at the top level, working level, on building the synergies. We have existing mechanism to implement it. I think the question is how now, moving forward. I think the updated FOIP creates a new venues for cooperation, but I think we need to keep exploring. As Mr. Shingo mentioned, it's flexible. So FOIP belongs to all of us, and it can be adapted to a local national context. It's not imposing kind of strategy. So we look at it from a multidimensional approach. For the economic, I think when we talk about digital economy integration, emerging technology, perhaps we should also connect it with cyber security, because I think online scam is emerging threat to a digital platform, and we need to build a trusted digital platform, a digital economy, and how to earn public trust in this. I think we need to work together on how we connect digital economy with the cyber security, more synergy between these two. And I think Cambodia, as a victim of online scam, is trying to figure out how we can promote digital transformation, fintechs, telecom, while we can preserve our national security and international security. So that's one thing. On a social cultural thing, I think in the updated version also mentioned about people-to-people ties. I think this area and the school of government can do more in promoting these people-to-people exchanges. I think the AOIP lecture series can be carried out in various cities around the region, not only in Jakarta. So just to rotate, so that you can disseminate this wisdom and the spirit of working together. It's not only convergent, but working together, doing things on the ground. So that is people, because at the end of the day, it's about earning trust and support from the people on the ground and benefit them on the ground. And I think Japan and ASEAN share this people-centered approach. But how do we define people-centered approach? People-centered approach, governance, innovation, international cooperation. It's still vague, but I think we can work on more elaboration on this people-centered approach. Security, because I'm more in security of things, so I will elaborate more on this security dimension of FOIP and AOIP. A lot have been said about maritime security. I think this is perhaps the most critical at this stage. If we look at the global situation and regional situation, you may know what's going on between Cambodia and Thailand with regards to the Gulf of Thailand overlapping claims. So after Thailand decided to withdraw from the MOU 2001, Cambodia opted to compulsory conciliation under UNCLOS. And this situation also encouraged and forced Cambodia to ratify UNCLOS. Even though we signed it in the 1980s, we haven't ratified it until lately. And at the parliament, we are speeding up ratification process because we see the urgent need to maintain this maritime rule-based maritime order. So hopefully, I think under the compulsory conciliation, Cambodia and Thailand can come with a joint solution to our lapping claims. So that is emerging maritime kind of challenges that we're facing in the region, in addition to already existing maritime security in the South China Sea, East China Sea, and so on. So maritime security is important, and Japan have offered critical support to capacity building. But I think we need more support in this kind of legal dimension of it. Produce more maritime lawyers to Southeast Asia. So maybe, I don't know whether school or government, you have a maritime security, maritime law program. So to invite various legal experts on maritime affairs to come to study in Japan or at area, so that we can build the capacity of maritime issues. Second, transnational crimes. And this transnational crime also very emerging complex. And I mentioned earlier about cyber fraud, cyber crimes, and online scams. I think this is new to Japan and also quite new to all of us when coming to the war on online scam and cyber fraud. So this is something that I think perhaps under FOIP and AOIP, under the framework of security dimension, we can focus more on this. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Van Litt. And you covered a lot of very important areas. The importance of the cybersecurity in the age of the interconnectedness and weaponization of the interconnectedness. And also the importance of the people-to-people approach and maybe importance of trust among the like-minded countries. And also, you refer to the maritime security, one of the most critical issues. And before going to Dr. Vihalja, actually, the time is limited for Ambassador Suhiro. Ambassador, may I ask you some questions? Because, you made a very elegant, but mainly, you just refer to historic background. And particularly, you are serving in Australia, a very important critical point for the Indo-Pacific. And so, can I ask you your views about the prospect or about the need for the future in both economic security, including the energy resilience and also maritime security? How would ASEAN proceed, and how we should achieve the progress of the synergy between Japan and ASEAN and FOIP and AOIP? Ambassador, please.
Thank you, Ambassador Yamada. Yes, from the updated FOIPs by Prime Minister Takaichi, it's mentioned on the digital infrastructure, critical mineral, and supply chain resilience. Yeah, so we have a lot of de-risking lately because of the sensitivity and the global geopolitics. Yeah. But I believe that I still remember in 2023, ASEAN leaders adopted a declaration on the promotion of electric vehicle, this one, yeah. And at the same time, we see that Japan and Australia play a very important role here because the largest automotive industry, the most experienced one is of course Japan, but now it's largely still ICE, internal combustion engine. But I understand that Japanese Toyota and some other brand, high brand automotive start moving also on hydrogen. Yeah, but at the same time, Australia is the main producer of the lithium spodumene, for instance. But this lithium spodumene to become a battery, either LFP battery, lithium ferrophosphate, or NCM battery, nickel, cobalt, manganese, needs some processing. Now, it is ASEAN countries, because if we look at the contribution of ASEAN manufacturing to GDP, normally 20%. Indonesia is perhaps 18, 19%, Vietnam more, but roughly 20, 22% of our manufacturing contribute to GDP. Yeah. Now, this is one. And number two, if we compare with Australia, Australia is more because advanced economy is more on services, 60% of the contribution to GDP is services, but only 5% manufacturing contribute to GDP. So let's imagine something like this. I believe that ASEAN FTA, the first time free trade agreement between ASEAN works well because Toyota used ASEAN as the production zone. Yeah. So for instance, rubber part always from Malaysia, electric part from the Bay of Manila, and Thailand for the engine because Thailand already Euro 5, Indonesia is still Euro 4 for the engine and assembling in Indonesia. So we can do something like this too for energy transition. Yeah, either this is based on EV or battery, or it might be also other form of fuel. Yeah, non-fossil, like hydrogen, for instance. So I would suggest that we can do and work in unison on this, our respective FOIP, try to find the connecting dot, and I believe we can do things together because the most experienced automotive producers and the power of manufacturing in ASEAN is growing from time to time, and the quality of mineral in Australia. So we can make ASEAN as a perfect manufacturing zone, both for Japan and for Australia as well.
Well, thank you very much. And do you have any comment about maritime security too?
Yes, maritime security. I would like to second my colleagues before. What we need is more legal certainty. We try to avoid using of force or miscalculation in the using of force. Yeah. So in our program on your Indo-Pacific, our Indo-Pacific, we need to set example. So for instance, Indonesia have a quarrel with Malaysia over Sipatan and Likitan. We brought to the court, and then Indonesia lose. Indonesia accept the fact, accept the decision of the court. Now Peta Branca, Singapore and Malaysia. So this kind of legal culture must be developed in a respective ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific. We need to have more lawyers trained on international law, specifically to address the issue in maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. Yeah, I think this is very important. Look, every time Indonesia have a quarrel with countries and put the case on the court, we always hire many foreign lawyers. It's very expensive too. So you can imagine if we have a program like this, yeah, together, because we are from the region, we study about our region. Our law is so different one to the others. But if we have special program and in the Indo-Pacific, providing scholarship for our lawyers to do study on the legal aspect of the Indo-Pacific, especially on the maritime dispute and so on, it will be great.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And well, Ambassador Sushuli found a very important point about the importance of the supply chain of manufacturing industry. Well, actually, Toyota depends upon, but not only Toyota, but the Japanese company has actually, fully cooperating with ASEAN region. And if you compare the FDI from Japan, the amount to ASEAN is much, much larger than the amount of the FDI to China or India. And that means how important ASEAN is for the supply chain of Japanese industry. And also, you mentioned about critical minerals and so on, and also it can produce critical minerals. And now it's actually processed in Malaysia, and this is a new cycle, and we love to import those materials to Japan. And also, you mentioned the importance of diversification for energy resources, and this is exactly what we are trying to promote under the Power Asia or Advanced ASIC 2.0, because diversifying the energy resources, not only on the carbons or oil and so on, but also to he mentioned about hydrogen, but not only even we have actually the nuclear option in our vision, and so that would not only help the energy resilience of the region, but also help us to reduce the emission with the carbon. And so that's why we are ready to actively work with ASEAN countries. And also on the maritime security, both Dr. Vanolit and Ambassador Sushio mentioned about the importance of UNCLOS. And the rule of law now being challenged, but we are stressing the importance of the rule of law. And also, particularly in UNCLOS, we have a lot of experts in Japan. And my mentor is, Ambassador Yanai, who used to be a chief judge of the, International Tribunal of UNCLOS. And also current judge from Japan is the former ambassador to Cambodia. And so, we're very happy to cooperate with you, actually. Thank you very much, Ambassador. And now, I'd like to go to Dr. Vihalja. Please give us your views.
Hi, good morning, distinguished audience. Thank you, Professor Yamada, and also thank you for the organizer ERIA. Good morning, Mr. Watanabe, and also JIIA as part of the host for today's event. So I've been tasked to talk about the relevance of diplomatic and strategic concept of AOIP and FOIP for geoeconomics. I have to make a disclaimer that I'm not an expert on AOIP or FOIP, so I'm going to focus more on the geoeconomic side of the discussion. First, let me begin by highlighting what I see as the key strategy concept of AOIP and FOIP. I think SecGen this morning has already laid out about the key principles of AOIP, but let me just repeat it again. The AOIP rests on several guiding principles: ASEAN centrality, openness, transparency, inclusivity, a rules-based framework, good governance, respect for sovereignty, non-intervention, and complementarity with existing cooperation frameworks. It targets openness, inclusivity, and ASEAN centrality. When I read the AOIP, I think there are three statements that I thought would be worth highlighting. The first one is when it states that ASEAN should be an honest broker within the strategic environment of competing interests. The second statement that I like to highlight is when it reaffirms that the outlook is intended to be inclusive in terms of ideas and proposals. And the third statement that I would like to highlight is the call that the Indo-Pacific as the call for Indo-Pacific to be a region of dialogue and cooperation instead of rivalry. So I think ASEAN is very explicit in terms of what it wants. It wants the region to be open, inclusive, and balanced amidst the major power rivalry. I try to avoid the word neutral because I think we can never be neutral, but we need a balanced approach. By open, inclusive, and balanced posture, it also indirectly implies being open to engage with any country that the SecGen already mentioned also this morning, and not taking sides in geopolitical rivalries. The EOIP also envisage ASEAN centrality as the underlying principle for promoting cooperation in the Indo-Pacific region. Although there are multiple interpretations what ASEAN centrality means, I think in my view, one can interpret ASEAN centrality as being ASEAN first. And one derivative of ASEAN first principle is to use ASEAN-led mechanisms as platforms for dialogue and implementation. In summary, ASEAN targets openness, inclusivity, and ASEAN centrality as the key diplomatic and strategic principles that anchor the outlook. Although in Japan's FOIP, it concurs and fully supports AOIP, FOIP is not the same as AOIP. That's why we have this discussion to make it more convergent and to look for more synergy. As already mentioned by the Director General, the updated FOIP will focus on freedom and resilience. The differences between AOIP and FOIP can be expected. We have different historical background, we have different geographical location, we have different institutional trajectories. However, how we resolve these key differences between AOIP and FOIP, I think will determine the geoeconomic dynamic in the region. As already mentioned, we're not looking to compete, but we're looking to complement. Let me just mention before going into the possible synergies and the possible cooperations. Let me just highlight several key differences between AOIP and FOIP that might be worth mentioning. I think the first one is that maybe we have to accept that there are differences in terms of strategic intent and posture. And I think the most fundamental difference is in strategic orientation. The AOIP is very explicit in terms of working with any external countries and treats the Indo-Pacific as a region of dialogue and cooperation instead of rivalry. Whereas, as we know, Japan has come under rising concerns in terms of China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific. And that reflects a desire to preserve maritime security and rule of law in the region. Second is institutional architecture. The OIP is firmly anchored in ASEAN-led mechanisms. The OIP envisages ASEAN centrality as underlying principle, with ASEAN-led mechanisms such as this East Asia Summit that was also mentioned in the ASEAN Outlook in the AOIP. Japan FOIP, by contrast, has been operationalized through other mechanisms, including the Quad and bilateral security frameworks that exist outside the ASEAN architecture. And the third difference is on perhaps on the values and norms emphasis. Japan's FOIP places strong emphasis on liberal democratic values, while AOIP endorsing a rules-based framework ensures that its two core interests, ASEAN centrality and strategic autonomy of the region, will be preserved, enhanced, and reinforced, deliberately avoiding value-based language that could be seen as exclusionary toward countries with different political systems. The next, the fourth difference that I would like to mention is perhaps the big elephant in the room, the approach to China. And this is perhaps the sharpest divergence. How do inclusive principle is being interpreted in AOIP and FOIP? ASEAN responded with its own AOIP, a framework designed to preserve strategic autonomy and prevent the region from becoming polarized. Its central message is clear, emphasizing ASEAN's strategic role in shaping the Indo-Pacific region into a zone of dialogue and cooperation, not rivalry. Japan FOIP, while increasingly stressing inclusivity, may be understood as a response or could be perceived as a response to Chinese growing influence in the region. However, there has been convergence over time, as already mentioned by speakers earlier. There's been convergence over time. Despite these differences, there's been notable convergence. ASEAN's announcements on its outlook on the Indo-Pacific in 2019, including many of the AOIP values, such as the importance of the rule of law. And Japan has also adapted its FOIP to accommodate ASEAN principles, including diversity, inclusiveness, and other principles that are mentioned in AOIP. So what are the implications of these differences in geoeconomics? Let me give you just one example that I already mentioned earlier is on the principle of inclusiveness. I think for ASEAN is already very clear that the principle of inclusiveness is very important. And that also means when it comes to economic relation, we don't want to exclude any countries. As it was also mentioned in the beginning of this panel discussion, we are focusing on de-risking, not decoupling from any country. Just to highlight the importance of China in ASEAN, for example, ASEAN relies on China for its intermediate inputs and capital goods. Without Chinese intermediate inputs and capital goods, ASEAN won't be able to produce and export so competitively. ASEAN also relies and will continue to rely on China for its green technology, including solar and wind technology, and to promote its decarbonization goals. In Singapore, for example, BYD has taken over from Toyota as the number one company in terms of car sales. ASEAN also depends on China on critical processing technology, process critical minerals, and mature chips. China is estimated to take over from Taiwan in dominating the mature chip segment. In an unlikely scenario, if ASEAN is pushed too hard to decouple from any of its external trading partner, then it will put ASEAN in a really difficult situation. Although there are opportunities to improve in terms of economic relations with China, in terms of de-risking choke point areas, diversifying sources of goods, linking Chinese firms in Southeast Asia with local MSMEs, or localizing Chinese investment for better integration with the local economy, it is not feasible nor wise to decouple from China completely. So the focus is on de-risking and not decoupling, as rightly stated in the beginning of the panel discussion. On the ASEAN-led approach, RCEP is one example where AOIP and FOIP converge in their visions and implementation. It should be used to build more resilient supply chain in the region, more integrated goods and services, as well as digital market. and development-oriented approach. Although AOIP and FOIP have many similarities and converging visions, we cannot expect that every element, principle, and approach to align. The most important is to be transparent, respect for each other's differences in order to build enough trust to work out the differences. So I really like Secretary General's emphasis this morning that trust is really the key in terms of future cooperation. Having differences does not preclude cooperation. So what are the areas of cooperation given some geopolitical and geoeconomic constraints? The AOIP, as already mentioned by Ambassador Siswo, identify 4 priorities of cooperation: maritime cooperation, connectivity, sustainability, and economic and other possible areas of cooperation. Meanwhile, FOIP 2.0, as already mentioned by Director General, emphasizes building hard and soft infrastructure for AI and data, including in energy and critical minerals, public-private collaboration and co-sharing, enhance security for regional peace and stability. So let me highlight 3 broad key areas for cooperation. The first one, I think, is to embolden and strengthen the existing and more forward-looking ASEAN-led initiatives. In the technology front, they include ASEAN framework for integrated semiconductor supply chains that AREA has helped to design. The upcoming ASEAN DEFA, Digital Economy Framework Agreement, that includes areas of cooperation, including cybersecurity, AI, emerging technology, data-driven innovation, competition policy. In energy front, they include ASEAN Petroleum Security Agreement, ASEAN Power Grid, Trans-ASEAN Gas Pipeline, ASEAN Carbon Neutrality Framework, Regional Oil Stockpiling, and Aizawa. Second is to preserve what remains of multilateral rules-based international order, especially when the US pulls out from so many of the international organizations and initiatives. A case in point is the Agreement on Electronic Commerce, which was initiated by Japan, Singapore, and Australia after WTO members failed to reach an agreement on e-commerce in the past WTO ministerial meeting. This will be the world's first baseline set of global digital rules aimed at facilitating cross-border digital trade, fostering an open digital environment, promoting trust in online transaction, and supporting an inclusive digital economy. As a plurilateral agreement, the e-commerce agreement is open to all WTO members to join. The third is to fill in the gap in the global governance in emerging sectors, especially in regards to AI governance. In the space, I think excluding China is a non-starter, since China has been leading in so many fronts in AI, including AI regulations. In fact, based on World Bank Digital Trade Regulatory Readiness, China's AI regulatory readiness scores higher than many of ASEAN countries, including Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. The World Data Organization, the first international body dedicated to promoting data development and governance, was also recently established in Beijing. These examples are not exhaustive. So to conclude, I just want to highlight that the relevance of AOIP and FOIP strategic and diplomatic concept on geoeconomics will be in how ASEAN and Japan manage the differences, especially in regards to the inclusivity principle. It is clear that ASEAN sees the Indo-Pacific outlook as inclusive. Differences, however, does not preclude cooperation. Given the geopolitical constraints, there's still a lot of room for cooperation, including in the energy and AI sectors. So let me conclude here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Wihaljar. And she described the difference and the convergence of the FOIP and the AOIP, with a lot of information. And she's a real expert. I appreciate that. And well, maybe, I'd like to ask Mr. Miyamoto, about the position of the Japanese government, but I'd like to just stress a few points. One, we have no surprise that there are differences. And, as Mr. Miyamoto clearly described, that we believe that each country has its own FOIP. And this is the beginning or starting point of the concept of the FOIP. And also, it's not so surprising that ASEAN has its own FOIP. That is AOIP, in my view, And that should be different from Japanese FOIP. And, we have actually, but at the same time, number two, we believe that there's a growing convergence under the current geoeconomic circumstances between ASEAN and Japan under the framework of the AOIP and the FOIP. And that's why we have proposed updated the FOIP. And this is a proposal for ASEAN to renew and to respond to the emerging challenges, And, any initiative cannot maintain its sense unless it evolves in accordance with the emerging circumstances. And so, just suggesting those 2 points, may I ask, but he's actually assistant minister, are you? For ASEAN, actually. And he's a big man, and also one of the key interlocutors for preparing the updated FOIPs. Mr. Miyamoto, please.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor once again. I was really inspired by the comments made by the panelists. So I just wanted to come back and point out a few things that might be relevant. So thank you for giving me the floor once again. Not responding to any particular question or point of view, but I think I failed to mention in my original statement that Japan and ASEAN have changed over time, and it's different from the past. There was a time in the past where Japan was clearly the giver of cooperation, provider of the funding and the means for infrastructure projects in the region. And ASEAN countries or countries in South Asia were the taker of this type of cooperation. Now, this is not true in the contemporary sense. The Japanese economy has shrunk in its relative size. The capability of our partner countries in the region we're talking about has grown. And now we are looking into a future. And when we speak about these new areas of cooperation that we're trying to focus on, it's even more relevant in that sense. So I think we need to be cognizant of that fact. And when we speak about the new FOIP, that's one thing that we're talking about as well. So I just wanted to point that out. Second point, I do understand that there is a view or tendency to see, Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific as some kind of a tool of competition with China or some other country. But I just want to make sure that people understand that this is not the intention. However, as I mentioned in the beginning, I think that the underlying thinking is that we cannot, and not any of us cannot afford to be reliant on one country, any country. I include the United States in this even, which is an ally for Japan. So we cannot rely just on China for the supply of a good or a service. That is true, I think. And when we speak of the new FOIP, we want to help each other become more independent, more resilient, as I mentioned in the beginning. Now, you may wish to look at the fact that the largest number of Japanese company operations still, even today, exist in China. It's larger than the United States. It's larger than anywhere else. So our supply chains are connected. That is a fact. However, we do see a shift happening. And if you look at the current trends, the largest number of shifting of production bases is happening away from China into ASEAN. So the I don't have the figures with me right now, but there is a significant shift of production capability shifting from China, away from China to ASEAN. This is because, not because of government policy or anything, it's because of the assessment of each of these companies, that they feel that they're better off if they shift away from China and go to ASEAN. There is a similar shift happening from China and also from Japan to South Asia as well. Places like Sri Lanka, India, and also Bangladesh, for example. So these things are happening not because of government policy. In the case of Japan, we cannot direct our companies to operate out of whichever country. But it is a fact, it's happening. And we might want to think about, you know, what is causing this and what it entails. So that's my second point. And then third point is, sorry, I think I may have covered everything. Yes, I guess I'm done. So those are my comments. And I think I've spoken too much. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Miyamoto. And well, I fully agree with what you try to describe. And well, I just refer to one article written by my dear friend. He's an Indian journalist called Raja Mohan. And he contributed to the Indian newspaper only yesterday, was titled G-2, not G2, you know. He's a very provocative person. He's an Indian journalist anyway. And but you know, the point is, you know, challenges are coming not only from one single country, but actually, you know, coming from at least more than 2 countries, you know. And that's actually everybody's shared understanding here, I think, probably. And so that's why he stressed that you know, partnership among the like-minded countries in the Pacific is getting more and more important. But at the same time, you know, despite his provocative title of the essay, he stressed the importance to engage with 2 big powers, United States and China, because it's also essential for everybody. And so maybe, you know, he's actually, you know, presenting, you know, common ground for many of us in a very provocative way. But, you know, I just try to introduce this maybe common foundation for, you know, as the basis of our discussion. And now we are passing the time expected to be closing, but, you know, can I take the questions from the floor if it is possible? And so I will take just only 2 questions. If there's anybody, please.
Yeah, I think it's my questions. My name is just from academy here about the maritime cohesion of China, right? And if I look at India, when it comes to the blue oceans, they have the West different assignment and the East different assignment. Japan, they take all at once, and then it's under you. It's very tough job. Recently, Prime Minister Modi came to Jakarta, and Prabowo also mentioned about the security. It was in 2016 or 17 when Indians are interested to have a seaport base in Aceh, Sabah, and it's connected into the Indians west, which is the Andaman and Nicobar. How does Japan's play in this, you know, security or, you know, capacity things here? That's all.
Thank you for this question. I did notice that Prime Minister of India, PM Modi, was in Indonesia But I will also say that our Prime Minister was in India until about 3 days ago, I think, end of last week. And I was with her too. I do think that we are speaking about the Indo-Pacific. And when we think about the ocean, connectivity issue, we cannot speak of the Pacific in its isolation. And that's, I think, where the whole concept came from. And we all rely on the connectivity, stretching across from the Indian Ocean all the way to the Pacific. In that sense, I think Japan would welcome India's, increasing role in this region as well. I do know that the Indians have provided a missile system to the Philippines, for instance, land-to-sea missiles. I think they had to decrease the range of the missile to comply with international obligations, but they still, did provide this capability to the Philippines. So increasingly, they are interested in the Pacific. They are also interested in increasing strategic cooperation in the Pacific Island countries, and also in Southeast Asia as well. So I think, well, as was discussed already, the political motives and the basic concepts over these types of policy from one country to another may differ. I think they do differ. And of course, after all, we're all individual independent countries. However, I think the main takeaway from today's seminar is that there is convergence and there is an area where we can work together to make sure that we can all prosper. So I think that the fact that the Indians are more and more interested in the Pacific is beneficial to us. And we should find areas where we can work together to make sure that, in this particular case, the sea lane of communication is kept safe and open for everyone. So from that perspective, I do think that the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Indonesia was very encouraging. And also that, I'm kind of heartened to think that this happened immediately after our Prime Minister's visit to India. So thank you for your question.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Miyamoto. And any other questions? Yes, please. That gentleman, yes. Just wait for the mic.
Thank you. My name is Romora. I'm a fellow at ERIA School of Government. My question concerns the relationship between ASEAN and the Quad in ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific. As we know, as mentioned by Ms. Monica, the quadrilateral security dialogue, which bring together the United States, Japan, India, and Australia, also promote a free and open Indo-Pacific through cooperation in maritime security and critical minerals. Now, as FOIP enters its second decade, how should ASEAN engage with the Quad so that the Southeast Asia also benefit from its initiatives in areas like supply chain and maritime cooperation? Thank you.
Monica-san, please start with.
Maybe you're the security expert.
Yeah, I can go first, I guess. Thank you so much for the question. Okay. The Quad, I think, is a very unique and it presents an opportunity to all of us. And it started, well, in one sense, I think the really meaningful cooperation of the Quad was done during the days of the COVID pandemic. And there was an initiative which was implemented among the Quad, 4 countries of the Quad, to make sure that, countries in the region had access to vaccines. And I think I can remember that this was a really tangible and visible way for these four countries to work together, which I think functioned effectively back in those days. Now I think we've moved on, and the Quad is trying to deal with the challenges of the day. But I think that the significance is that even under the present day consequences that we all face, the Quad has held itself together. When President Trump came to office in his second term, and on the day of his inauguration, there was a Quad Foreign Ministers meeting which was held in Washington, D.C. And we, honestly speaking, we weren't sure if the Americans would stay in the Quad or if they would want to cooperate through the Quad. But they have stayed, and they've recently had the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting in India, right? Yeah, India as well. So it is one thing that, Quad only includes Japan, US, India, and Australia. And it has no member representing from ASEAN, of course. But I think it's still significant that it has held together as a group and intends to continue to be active in this region. And so in terms of how ASEAN could engage with the Quad, I think you could find, like the example I gave about the vaccines back in those days, any type of cooperation in a functional area that we could do together would be, I think, welcomed from the Quad perspective. We could also even think about doing, like Quad Plus or Quad Plus ASEAN or something like that in the future, where ASEAN countries could also pitch in and make contributions if and when our interests converge. And I think from today's discussion, there are many areas where this could be done. Thank you.
Thank you. I think keep exploring all the possibilities. I think all these mechanisms, including Quad, of course, maybe they have different perspective on Quad, a bit more sensitive than FOIP, but I think keep exploring and find a way that we can build synergy. So, but of course, I think all of us put our national interest first, and how we define our national interest, how we align our national interest with the interests of other countries. Thank you.
Well, I think we cannot stop countries to form trilateral or minilaterals, right? So if these four countries want to form a trilateral for their own benefits, then I don't think ASEAN could stop that. But I do find some possible ways to work with ASEAN, between ASEAN and Quad, as was already mentioned by Director General on the COVID vaccine, but also on disaster relief. I think they have a new initiatives on like satellite-based disaster management relief. Of course, on decarbonization, on health, critical minerals, resilience, and energy security. So I think there are some overlapping interests that ASEAN can work together with Quad.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And, I need to conclude to the discussion. It's not easy, but at least, one, we have a common recognition that actually Indo-Pacific is a very diverse region. And that's why any initiative for connecting the Indo-Pacific should be able to embrace the diversity. And the diversity is also a source of richness of the region. And that's why inclusiveness or flexibility is very important. As Mr. Miyamoto mentioned, or my Prime Minister mentioned, that each country could have its own FOIP or AOIP, whatever the naming. And number two, but at the same time, now actually, there's a shared recognition of the convergence of the interest and very critical and interest to address the challenges we are facing among the like-minded countries in the Indo-Pacific region. And now India, well, just the Prime Minister is visiting Indonesia, but is an essential partner for any of us. China as well, of course, And so, there's a clear, trend of convergence of interest. And if the nations in the Pacific are combined, we have a huge potential toward the future. And that's why, it's challenging because, we are now trying to just converge a very diverse region. But at the same time, there's the dynamism and there are common challenges intensifying. And so this is actually what's promoting us to have the deeper discussion on this subject. Well, so thank you very much for joining us today, and also please give a big applause to the excellent panelists today. Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to conclude our symposium. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you to all our distinguished speakers. I'd like to kindly invite you to please return to your seats for the closing session.
I'm writing out of time.
Thank you very much once again to Ambassador Yamada for leading us through the conversation, and to all our distinguished speakers for a truly engaging discussion. Now, to close today's event, including the symposium, I would like to invite Professor Nobuhiro Aizawa, Dean of the ERIA School of Government.
Thank you very much. As a closing remark, I don't want to go too much into substance. I really wanted to thank all of you, especially for the panelists, but also for all our guests who came to attend here. I think this is a manifestation of how privileged we are to be here in Jakarta with this rich community of thought leaders and concerned specialists, governance experts as well. I think this is what we wanted to build up here in ERIA. Jakarta is a place not only as a capital of Indonesia, but also where ASEAN Secretariat has built its community throughout the 60 years. And we cannot underutilize or underappreciate this richness of community. And I think, as all our panelists, including the keynote speaker, Secretary General, has emphasized, the dialogue, to continue the dialogue, is extremely important. We are talking about potentials and convergence, but if we don't know what we are doing, we cannot find what we need to converge and what we need to find to work together. And I think this kind of dialogue we consider this as like an intellectual potluck. We have to bring in our menus and items and key, selling points, because if we don't acknowledge these converging interests or the things that we are actually doing. I think this is always the start and always a necessity for us to build the community and the institutions that we have our goodwill to present. So ERIA here is in Jakarta to really capitalize and maximize the community we have. So please bring in your intellectual menus, because this is where we wanted to cook our best policy for the benefit of our regional interests together. And this, just like the symposium, we would love to, engage more with you all. And I hope this to be the first of many to come. And please visit and please speak out in our forum, in many of the forum we will organize. So once again, thank you so much, and hope you enjoyed the discussion, and I hope you will bring a lot of insights, but also you're making new friends in coming here in our institution, and hope to see you again once again. And once again, thank you so much, everyone.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we hope today's lecture and symposium have provided fresh perspectives on the evolving Indo-Pacific landscape and reinforced the importance of dialogue, cooperation, and partnership in advancing a peaceful, open, and inclusive region. Please join me in giving one final round of applause to our speakers, moderators, and participants. It has been a pleasure to serve as your MC today. On behalf of the organizers, thank you for your attendance and active participation.